Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are joined by a very special guest, Rusty Buckets, aka Jacob. First time on the pod. We're very, very excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Just got out of bed.
Excellent.
Nothing to complain about yet.
That's great. Well, hopefully we don't give you too much to complain about, but if I know Logan Camden, he will. Am I right, Logan? How are you, buddy?
Bruh.
You know, Logan, I think I need to make more of a concerted effort to check in on you at the beginning of every pod. Because every other podcast, they do a sort of mandatory, how are you, how you doing? I never ask you. I just steamroll you when we start talking about basketball.
That's how we're supposed to do it, and I would just say
Okay.
chilling if you ask me anyway. So
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. That's a good point, man. All right. Well, we are going to talk some basketball today. And I think let's just start by talking about the team that we've been talking about a lot recently because obviously they were a part of not just the biggest story this season, but the biggest trade in NBA history, getting Luka Doncic. And they have been rolling ever since. The Lakers have just been reeling off wins against a number of quality teams as of late. And they did it again last night, beating the Knicks on national TV. So, Jacob, I'll start with you here. Do you think the Lakers are a top two team in the West?
As of right now, I've kind of been going back and forth between them and the Golden State Warriors. I feel like weirdly enough, the Lakers actually kind of have a better supporting cast, and obviously they have the best player. So I've kind of been leaning them. It kind of is dependent on how well the defense they've been playing lately holds up, because I do feel like we've seen defensive schemes similar to what JJ Redick's been doing that last for a little bit and then teams kind of figure it out. So I'm trying to determine if this is gimmicky in any kind of way or if it's very, very real and it can translate to the postseason. If that's the case, if they can manage to be that good defensively and have the trio of Luka, LeBron, and Austin Reeves offensively, then I think they'd have to be better than the Warriors at that point. But I also feel like if you catch Jimmy and Steph, like both having a good series, they can beat anybody.
I think I tend to agree with that. I'm a little bit higher on the Lakers just because of how confident I am in this offense. I think they have an argument for having the best top three offensive players of any
Yeah.
team in basketball, and I mean that's why I think they are in my two spot, concretely behind Oklahoma City. One, they've been on one hell of a run lately, like you mentioned. They've won 8 straight now after this overtime victory against New York, but these are two of the greatest offensive basketball players in NBA history, two of the greatest scorers and playmakers ever, and two of the great enhancers and amplifiers. And you see this every single night, the quality of shots that are able to consistently manufacture on the offensive end. And that's kind of where I come down with LA is nobody has a Luka stopper. Nobody has a LeBron stopper. You know, you have limiters to these guys. You have guys that can maybe make it hard on their life. There's just not a good or simple answer to this offensive problem. And I don't think a team has two guys that can really legitimately slow them down. LeBron looks completely rejuvenated now that Luka is in here and is giving full effort defensively. The defense and the role players are playing their asses off. They have the number 3 defensive rating with Luka. I do think you point out a good concern. I wonder if there's a formula that a team will implement that exposes this defense to an extent, but I also wonder how much does it really matter because of how great this offense is going to be. They shoot a ton of threes. The biggest difference to me is just how they can blow teams out of the water now with this offense. They went from shooting 33 threes a night with Anthony Davis. That number is up to 43 a night with Luka Doncic. They're making 3 more threes
That's
per
how
game.
JJ wants them to play.
Exactly. And Luka just makes life so much easier for everybody. I mean, I think back to that Pelicans game. They made 8 threes in the first quarter and were dogging them from the jump. So I do have concerns about the defense, and I think that is the question about this team's ceiling, Rusty. But damn, man, I also think that this Lakers team has a superpower, and that superpower is this amazing dominant offense and the combined prowess of LeBron and Luka.
The offense is undeniable. I have no concerns about that, especially I feel like LeBron is showing just how damn talented of an off-ball player he's always been, which a lot of people have always disrespected historically. But that didn't surprise me at all. I saw a lot of people when the trade went down like, there's only one ball. How are Luka and LeBron going to play together? It's like LeBron hasn't been taking the ball up the floor every possession in like 4 years. Also, Austin Reeves benefits so much from those two guys, even if his numbers have technically dipped a little bit because his February run was so insane. Interesting choice of month to do that, but whatever.
True.
He benefits so much from LeBron and Luka having as much attention as they have, because when they're on the floor, you have to put your third best defender on Austin Reeves. That is a hell of a problem to have. So the defense being like very wing centric, everybody switching a lot, everybody playing passing lanes super, super aggressively. I feel like we even saw that against the Denver Nuggets from the Lakers when they were in the conference finals in 2023, and that didn't work at all. So I don't know. I need to see it for a longer period of time. The offense is undeniable, but I think they're only like truly capable of hanging with OKC if the defense is also there. Also, the big question beyond that is the everybody else of it all. Everybody beyond your three, like, it's fine. There's a couple of guys who are pretty good, but by no means is it an ideal core of role players.
Yeah. And I think that is the reason that it's not clear that the Lakers are the second team in the West. And I think the defense as well, it clearly has surpassed my expectations. I have been wildly impressed by what they've done defensively. I thought that they were going to be a bottom 10 sort of defense after the Luka trade. There's never a question that they'd be a dominant offense, but they've been the number one defense in this 7-game win streak. And like, they have been really, really impressive. Now, you talk about maybe teams figuring some of this stuff out. I think if they run it back against Denver and they do the same defensive strategy, which they will, that being fronting Jokic basically all game, doubling him consistently off ball, doubling and tripling him off the catch, this stuff that now we've seen multiple teams do since. I think that there are a number of counters that the Nuggets can turn to. I think they can have Jokic run more inverted pick and roll. I think they can use him as a screener more to free up Murray. I think that also they can just be better about their spacing. I think that they can shoot better. MPJ has been slumping. Like, I've actually been doing a really deep dive into the coverage that Jokic has been seeing so much, and my take is it's a really good strategy. Like, it makes a ton of sense to not guard Russell Westbrook and Christian Brown and deny Jokic touches as much as possible. That is true. It's a very good strategy, but it still is not unsolvable, and I think that the more the Nuggets see it, they'll get better against it. So for that specific matchup, I think that the Lakers found the best answer they possibly could have, and it's a way better answer than I thought they were capable of post Anthony Davis defensively. But it's not necessarily foolproof or like a permanent solution to the extent that we saw 2 weeks ago.
Just specific to the Nuggets matchup, I don't think there's such thing as a foolproof defensive scheme against Nikola Jokic. I remember when they were doing something similar in the 2023 Western Conference Finals. A big thing that came of that is like every time the double would come from Jokic, they would have like Aaron Gordon or Michael Porter Jr. cut at the exact time. So it's like the moment that the double comes and open shots there. So I wouldn't be surprised if Denver still figured them out. Denver's probably also right there with the Lakers and the Warriors, at least for me. But I don't know. They're kind of weird. They're always there's always slightly off to me when it seems like they should be fine, and then they're not.
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme of the season. Like, they've had some high highs, and like the personnel is clearly there. Obviously, they've lost talent from the title team 2 years ago, but they've also gained some things. And then you look at some of the big games, and they just don't show up defensively. They don't compete enough there. And I think that this is still a great offense. It's the number 2 offense in basketball, and they have, in my opinion, the best offensive player ever. So, like, the fact that they can play with more pace, they have so much cutting, they can produce great offensive results, but we're going to see teams just continue to test their lack of shooting over and over again. And you mentioned the ability to counter teams loading up on Jokic with their cutting. We're just seeing a more extreme version of teams not just selling out to stop Jokic, but packing the paint entirely to stop those cutting opportunities too, and literally just say, Christian Brown and Russell Westbrook, we do not care about your existence if you're going to be out on the perimeter whatsoever. But I do think that you get Aaron Gordon back, who played in the Lakers game, but then hasn't played in the last couple games that they've been seeing that coverage. And he's such a great dunker spot target. He has such good chemistry with Jokic. It'll get better. And I do think that Denver is still definitely the other team in the top 3 out west for me, because I think that their offense is that great, and I think that they're capable of defending at a decent level. But the reason that I felt pretty strongly a couple weeks ago that Denver was better than the Lakers was that I didn't think that the Lakers were going to be defending at a significantly higher level than Denver. And they are. I mean, they've been super impressive there. And Jackson Hayes is the lone big. He's been pretty good defensively. Like, in this recent stretch.
Trey Jemison like that, bro.
Okay, yeah. Trey's not playing in the playoffs, man. But shout out to Trey. He plays his ass off. He does play his ass off. But Hayes has been effective as that rim protector, and he can switch decently well. And the small ball lineups have also been really effective for them. And in this win
That's
streak,
the first thing that stood out to me the moment the trade went down, as I'm like, Luka's a great rebounder. LeBron's a great rebounder. Luka plays point guard, so like there's going to be enough rebounding and size out of this group that it will work. And I think small ball is something they're going to lean on more and more in the postseason, just because Jackson Hayes is very limited.
I totally agree. And I think that their scariest lineup to me is when they go Luka, Reeves, LeBron, DFS, Vando. Because then you have your 2 best defenders on the floor, and you have your 3 best offensive players on the floor. You have no concerns about Vando's offensive limitations because he's basically just playing the 5 for you. I didn't think those lineups would be as good defensively as they've been, because I still worried about, they have good size for a small ball group, but I also thought that's going to be a slower small ball group with Reeves and Luka on the perimeter. And LeBron has been so active defensively. And Luka, dude, I mean, Luka's averaging 2 steals a game. He's getting deflections consistently. He's using his size and length as effectively as he can defensively.
I have always felt like the defense thing with Luka was overblown. I think people look at generational talents and they find the one thing that they don't do super great and just harp on that constantly. But like, Luka has had multiple times in his career where he was fine and even good as a defensive player. I think the 2024 finals had a lot of ugly moments, and that really stuck to people's memory. But he was playing with like 4 damn injuries in that series, carrying the offensive load even despite that. So it's like, I don't blame him for getting blown by a couple of times under those conditions. So I'm not really shocked that Luka's playing defense the way he is. I'm more shocked that LeBron is, because the man is 40, and I'm like, so you can just casually pick up being an elite defender whenever you feel like it. That's crazy.
In big spots too. I mean, game-changing plays like chase down blocks in the clutch.
He's always been able to do that. I mean, he's always like, he'll have a defensive moment every game, but it's not just the moments now. It is a possession to possession thing, which is very, very important for them.
It's super impressive. And I'm with you largely on the Luka defense point. Like, I think for most of last year, he was a passable, solid defender, but the finals were truly abominable. I mean, that was the worst defensive performance on that stage from a star we've ever seen. And you're right, he's hobbled, but I still thought that was inexcusable.
I think he gets the pass. I think he gets the pass, especially. My logic has always been like, if your offensive superstar is doing what he's supposed to do on that end, the rest of that shit is everybody else's job. And not to the extent that he isn't required to try on defense. I'm not saying that, but like they pointed to that like that was the number one problem Dallas had, and it's like there are 5 or 6 things that I would point out to before I'm talking about Luka's defense as the problem.
I don't know if I could get 5 or 6 deep. Now, I think their offense had a number of problems. I also think that when you are facing maybe the greatest mismatch attacking team ever, actually, I'll drop the maybe. I'll say the Celtics are better than any team we've ever seen at pinpointing your defensive weak point and just crushing him in isolation. then it's a real problem if you're going to have one guy who is defending horribly on the floor because
Yeah.
they can get an advantage every single time.
For
now.
sure, but like my point is like, especially given the injury stuff, like he is doing more positive out there than anybody else is. So if that's the case,
Well, yeah, but
he's
they
not
got
the first
destroyed.
guy. He's not the first guy I'm complaining about, is my point.
I just wouldn't give him a pass, is the way you said it, just because those moments are the ugliest I've ever seen. And no matter how good of an offensive player you are, if
He
I
also
was a
didn't have a
teammate,
good offensive series.
if I was a teammate of Luka Doncic's, I would have been rubbed the wrong way. And the one that sticks out to me in my brain more than anyone else is just that possession where he goes under the basket. He's in the crowd almost at that point, and the Celtics have a 5-on-4 for like over 10 seconds, and it's just like that's. Don't get me wrong. I see your point, but there were just some inexcusable moments from any basketball player on that stage to me. I agree with you. Like fundamentally, like I think it may have gotten overblown a little bit, but it's inexcusable. I think
It's also just that obviously the finals are the biggest stage. I understand that that's going to be the brightest light, but 5 games don't define Luka as a defender, especially when injured. And like, I'm telling you, you can very dramatically see the difference between Luka when he is hobbled and Luka when he is healthy. When Luka's healthy, he's fucking, I don't know. Can I curse on
Yes.
this? He's fucking terrifying when he is in shape. And you can see in the way that he moves. So like, I truly just felt like he had very little in the tank. And he used it on offense, and I can understand why that was the case. His teammates shot like 15% from 3 for the whole damn series.
Yeah, it was brutal. I mean, the Celtics also were just way, way better, and I thought
that series was always going to be in hell.
Effective. Yeah. They also did a really, really great job of obviously limiting Luka's playmaking impact by forcing him to play one-on-one so much, and then they just guarded him really well. I mean, he didn't have a good offensive series ever. The Celtics are a great team.
I think it was relative to everybody else he did, just because at least he was putting up some numbers.
Yeah,
but the bar is in hell from that series.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. I guess I'm more applying the Luka Doncic bar to him, and I think that it was a really bad series by the standard that we have for him as a player.
I'll just keep coming back to the injury stuff. I know for a fact he had like 4 different things, like a shoulder, a leg, a knee, like all going into it. So I'm like, he just wasn't.
I don't
it wasn't
deny
Luka.
that. Yeah, but it's also like he filleted Minnesota right before that. So clearly he's capable of reaching a high level. I don't know how we got into this whole Luka finals thing.
I don't think he had a Rudy Gobert motivator.
Yeah, maybe that's what it was. Maybe he didn't have somebody who was
hate.
fueling him with hate enough. No, that's a good take. Yeah. That's a good take. But regardless, he's been solid defensively for the Lakers so far. Yeah. Their collective rim protection has been much better than I thought. They're top 4 in opponent field goal percentage at the rim in this win streak. I thought that they did a good job on Cat. I thought that they were able to prevent him just yesterday from really taking advantage of some of his size advantages that he did have in that matchup. So I do think that they're the second best team in the West right now. Like, again, they're not the number 1 defense in basketball, but I do think that this is probably like a top 10 defense, probably somewhere in the back half of the top 10. And then offensively, they have the best duo in basketball. They have the best offensive big 3 in basketball. I honestly think it's pretty clear. And then they have good play finishing around those guys. They're a 77th percentile spot up team. They're an 87th percentile cutting team. Like, these guys, Rui knocks down shots. DFS has been shooting the ball well this year. Not so much as of late, but in totality. It's a really, really great offensive formula. Like you said, Logan, nobody can both cover LeBron and Luka in single coverage. You may have one guy. You may have an OG who I thought did a good job on Luka, or you may have a Lou Dort. You don't have 2 of them, and you need 2 of them to deal with these 2 at once. And then if they're going to defend at a good level, I think that's the top 2 team in the West.
Yeah, that's part of how I feel about the OKC matchup, because OKC has a crazy amount of perimeter defense, but they don't have a lot of big wings. They have a lot of guards who can defend, and like, you can get away with that a couple of possessions, but I think Luka and LeBron will just have a bunch of get big moments in that series.
Yeah. I think it's Lou who can hound them. I mean, especially Luka, we have seen him do relatively well against, and he's just so physical. And then I think that they're honestly probably going to do a ton of trapping and blitzing and just do what they do best, which is
classic.
be super aggressive defensively. Yeah, fly around. They're the fastest defense. They've got crazy hands and length, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge for anyone. It's a challenge even for OKC, like you said, best defense in the league, because we've never seen an offensive duo like LeBron and Luka, two god-tier mismatch attackers and god-tier playmakers put together. It's really fun, man. I underestimated how much this team would be capable of right away. Basically 100% because I underestimated the defense. The offense hasn't been as good as I think it can be.
I've been trying to rack my brain on if there's ever been a playmaking duo as good as this one. LeBron and Luka are both top 5 playmakers of all time. I can't think of anything that comes close. I was like, Magic Johnson and Norm Nixon?
Yeah. No. No, that's legitimately like one of the next couple I would mention. I think probably number 2 is Harden and CP3.
Oh yeah, that's a clear one. I'm surprised I didn't think of that.
But it's still not Luka and LeBron level.
Yeah,
but sure. I love the Magic and Norm Nixon shot because that legitimately is one of the first that I thought of too.
I was actually thinking of recent because Chris Paul is a free agent this summer. I'm like, he should join the Lakers, and then we just have an undeniably, impossibly great playmaking trio.
That'd be awesome. That would be very, very fun. So you're really high on the Warriors. That's interesting. I'm a Warriors fan, so I'm happy to hear that. So you mentioned earlier, this does relate to a question we had, which was which team out west in the 4 through 6 range, because we talked about the top 3 now, that's Memphis, that's the Rockets, and that's the Warriors, is most dangerous come playoffs. You think it's the Warriors, clearly. Why is that?
I think it's easily the Warriors, because the Grizzlies, what they're doing this year is really cute. I like it. I think they're maximizing what they have, which is great. I also think it's awesome that they've done like we're injured all the time. What if we just had 15 good players? So they have that to fall back on, and they're not going to fall apart in the way that they have. I'm worried about how Ja fits into it. It kind of feels like their system has phased him out to an extent, which I don't know if that was the correct decision in the long run, even if it's been working and making them pretty good this year. The Rockets, it's just not going to happen this year. That's where I'm at. I don't think the half-court creation is nearly good enough. And then on the Warriors end of things, I'm a big Steph guy. Been going back and forth in my head as to whether or not he might be my favorite player of all time, because I just watched his rise. Even when I started rooting against him in the Kevin Durant era, I was still like, that's my guy, though. Seeing him play like he has his entire career lately, after the barely crossing the 20-point per game mark for the start of the season, it's been very nice. Like the Golden State Warriors, and I'm sure you know this, were a very hard, depressing watch before the Jimmy Butler deal went down. Watching Pods and Buddy Hield as ball handlers and shot creators was disgusting. So I'm a big Steph guy, but then a lot of this, Steph was playing good going into the trade deadline, but then the Butler deal goes in, and it's like, for the first time, even when they won in 22, honestly, since the first time since Kevin Durant was there, I'm seeing a defense that isn't just going, oh shit, Steph, oh shit, Steph, oh shit, Steph, every time. They're still doing it. You're never not going to think, oh shit, Steph, when he's on the floor. But there are other things preoccupying you because of Jimmy's ability to go downhill, get to the free throw line. I also feel like the role players, while their numbers haven't boosted a ton, they look like they're in a more comfortable position. They're not asked to overextend themselves. No one's asking Pods to be a shot creator for real anymore. And that's a blessing. One thing that I feel like has gone super under highlighted as it relates to this Warriors team, they have shot the 3 ball poorly since this deals went down. Steph and Quentin Post are the only guys who have shot the 3 even remotely well. And they, last I checked, it might have changed, but they're the number 3 offense in the NBA shooting. I think they were 17th or 18th in 3-point percentage, being the number 3 off. That says a lot. It's like, this isn't even the best version of this team that we've seen. You get Buddy and Pods starting to hit their threes like that, Moses Moody hitting his threes like that, and suddenly I think you have 2 guys who you can't guard one-on-one, 2 guys who you can't give your undivided attention, and then a bunch of other players on the floor who will punish you if you bring doubles. That, I think the Warriors could be very scary. It's pretty much just entirely determined by if Jimmy Butler has the turn it on thing still left in him, which I will say, while his numbers since joining the Warriors haven't been particularly spectacular, the eye test, he passes it. He passes
100%.
it for real. He looks just as comfortable and capable as when he was 32.
Yeah,
Logan?
I want to touch on that point you were making about the offense and their three-point shooting, because, Carson, I think you touched on this. You got to give credit to one, the brilliance of the players on the court, but also to Steve Kerr's offense and all the off-ball movement and actions and stuff they do to generate high-quality shots. But it really is the brilliance of these top 3 guys. Not only do the Warriors have the best offensive player of these teams, I think they arguably have the second best offensive player of these teams. And you're talking about Jimmy, not fully exerting himself. That's what Jimmy does. When Jimmy needs to pop the clutch, I know Jimmy's going to pop the clutch. He's going to get into gear and be ready to go. Like, that is what makes this team terrifying. Offensively, now that you can release some of this pressure off of Steph and let all these guys just play this beautiful flowing brand of basketball, because they're all so intelligent. I mean, we were talking about, the talent level of a Luka, a LeBron, and a Reeves. Steph, Jimmy, and Dre may be the smartest trio in all of the NBA. Like, these are masters of their craft at this point in their game. And, we're talking about how some of the pressure has been alleviated off of Steph's shoulders offensively. It's also the fact that a lot of this pressure has been lifted off the shoulders of Dre defensively. Now you've got a guy who knows where to be in position. And I just think it's all coming together for the Warriors. And what I mean by that isn't necessarily that, because I think I'm pretty close to where you're at, Jacob, I think, with the Warriors, where I do take them as a legitimate threat. They're not my favorite, but I believe in them in a different level. And it's they're definitely more scary to me than Golden State or Houston. They just don't have a guy that strikes fear into my heart like Steph Curry. You're talking about that, oh shit, Steph. Yeah, Steph still got that gear. I think Jimmy's still got that gear. And like you said, man, I don't think the Warriors are playing their best basketball right now. Like, they're playing cohesive, they're playing good on both sides of the ball, but I think they can play even better.
The
Warriors,
shot variance hasn't been on their side, but the system, everything about it is very clearly functioning. They're getting good looks, they're just not dropping.
And you got to think that the pendulum is going to swing right back in their favor by playoff time. The Warriors, to me, are one of the scariest first-round draws for a low seed. I would not want to see that team round 1.
It's also the Warriors. They own the three-pointer. It's theirs.
They invented it.
Where were you when Steph Curry invented the three-point line?
Unbelievable what he's done for this sport.
He made skinny white guys viable in pickup basketball, man.
That's you, buddy.
I can speak to it. I can attest.
He did that.
Yeah, as the kid who could only hit catch and shoot threes growing up, I really appreciate the increase in value. I've always had my headcanon that when Steve Kerr joined the Warriors, and he made them successful through three-point shooting, it was out of spite for being underappreciated in his era. He's like, I'll show you how good three-pointers are.
Dude, I will say, speaking of Logan's point about the little white guys at pickup, I've been playing a lot of pickup as of late, and I'm playing in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, and there's so much Warriors-esque motion offense being run just in pickup. Dudes are setting flare screens, dudes are setting back screens all the time. Everybody can shoot. I'm like, is this all the Warriors' influence? Is this just local, homegrown? Mind the game, dude. Shout out Braun. Shout out JJ.
JJ and LeBron made back screens cool.
Somebody had to do it.
Right.
I think the Warriors are the choice here. It's definitely not Houston. I've been saying all year, Houston is just not a serious
love Amen
playoff
Thompson.
team.
Shout out.
Oh my God.
But
literally one of the loves of my life. I'd do anything for him.
He's been top 3 most enjoyable players for me this year, easily.
Unbelievable. And top 1 athlete in the league.
I saw him and his brother at OTK a couple of years ago, and
That's
I was
fun.
like, I have not seen people move like that in
Oh, it's
person
crazy.
before.
Oh, it's unbelievable. 6'7", first step, the vertical pop, all of it. It's unbelievable. Also,
Yeah.
big trivia guys. Those guys really like their basketball history. We got to get them on
I
someday,
really
Logan.
super appreciate that. It always makes me a little
It's
sad
cool.
when someone comes in the league and they just don't know shit. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I recognize being an NBA historian isn't a requirement of your job, but I think if you have the history of the game in the back of your mind, I think
Yeah.
it's a positive force.
Yeah, I just love it. They were getting asked some trivia question. I think it was about like brothers to play in the NBA, and they pulled Zoran Dragic, Goran's brother, and I was like, these are my dudes right here.
I've seen a good amount of your clips, like just doing trivia, pulling stuff like that, and you have a way better fastball than me
Oh, I have a
because
sickness.
I know my history very well. You know your history to an extent that I'm like, what do you sleep? What's wrong
It's
with
unnecessary.
you?
Well, it's really unnecessary, and I'm actually seeking treatment for it now. But anyways, shout out to the Thompson twins. They're welcome anytime. I love them, man. It's just the Rockets' half-court offense is one of the worst in basketball, and you're not going to win in the playoffs like that.
26th
it's
right
terrible.
now.
And they play so hard. They're so young. They're so athletic. That's just the prototype of you can win games in the regular season. The bottom's going to fall out in the playoffs. And they've already been seeing some regular season.
I think they've maxed out on that play
Yeah.
style. They're doing it as well as they can, but there's only so far you can take it.
I agree. Now, I do think that Memphis is in a different tier from Houston. I think that they are a lot closer to the Warriors for me than either of these teams are to the Rockets. I still think that I prefer the Dubs, though. You talk, Jacob, just about like the synergy of this team, the fit, the system, how well everything is working. Jimmy, to me, is one of the absolute best connective stars in the league today. Just his ability to immediately come in and whatever you need on both sides of the ball, you need him to screen, you need him to cut, you need him to make decisions against a zone from the middle of the floor, you need him to be a great short roll playmaker. He can do all of that. And then when it comes down to, hey, can you get us a bucket in isolation? I mean, he's been incredibly efficient as an on-ball scorer this year. He just hasn't done as much of it because he's older and saving his body and is, I think, still getting sort of adjusted to his role with the Warriors in terms of not wanting to overexert himself with scoring volume.
I do feel like the obvious holy shit behemoth playoff performer that he's been before, I feel like people hold that image of him, and then when he scores 18, 5, and 5, they're like, oh, what the hell is this? Start trying more. But like, it's as impactful of an 18, 5, and 5 as you could realistically ask for.
I could not agree more because he's making a positive contribution on basically every possession in some way or another. He's doing it off ball, on ball, and then defensively, I think also you see his IQ is so valuable. His off ball defense, him and Dre are such a great pairing. And I don't think it's at all surprising that this team is by far at their best offensively when they go small and they go 5 out, or if they don't go small, then they still have Post on the floor, who is a stretch big, obviously. That makes a ton of sense.
I wanted to ask, what do you think of Quentin Post? Because I've seen mixed reviews in terms of like how viable he will be in a postseason.
I think it's pretty simple. If he's making his shots at a really high clip, he's viable. If he's not, he's not viable. Because obviously defensively, you are sacrificing something. But I think that if you are going to play Jimmy and Dre together, you just really want to have them in a 5-out situation offensively where they have a stretch big alongside them. Because if you put them alongside a conventional big, then I think that the spacing issues start to become noticeable. And the Warriors centers also just aren't good. I mean, no hate to Loon. I love the guy, and no hate to TJD. But I think that Post brings a unique value that makes him worth playing. Not a ton, but 15 minutes a game in the playoffs, I think he can give you that. And
I think Draymond enables him a lot. Draymond's ability to play much bigger than he is.
Agreed.
Be a defensive anchor. Like if Quentin Post can just like be in the right spot while being a large body, he can be passable.
And it's interesting too because I think they both amplify him on the defensive end, but I think his floor spacing amplifies Dre and Jimmy, where like
100%.
You can't exploit their issues floor spacing.
Totally. And that's how they have to play. They have to either go smaller, they have to have post at the 5, but both of those lineups have been extremely successful. Like defensively, what they've done as this small ball group has been so impressive. They're a top 3 defense since Jimmy joined the team. They're forcing turnovers at an elite rate. They're forcing 18 per game since he joined. Dre is still able to be a high-level rim protector at his size, which is just incredible. And I really think that they have found the right starting group with obviously the big 3 and then Pods and Moody. I think that Pods and Moody are both plus defenders. I think they do their job there. And then I think that they're guys, especially Pods, with good feel offensively. They fit in well. And Pods' shot has obviously been very inconsistent. But when it's on, he's a really good all-around basketball player. Like you said, not meant to be cast in the role of a creator or even a secondary ball handler at this point, but he does so many positive things when he's in the right role. And that's the beauty of all this. This was a Warriors team where everybody was trying to punch above their weight because they just needed anybody who could provide any offense alongside Steph before the Jimmy trade, and they didn't have the personnel. Their offense outside of Steph was a disaster. Now you introduce Jimmy, everybody's roles are scaled down a bit, and everybody is playing better because they're more comfortable with what they're being asked to do. And then obviously, like, Steph Curry is just a monster. Last 12 games since Jimmy joined the team, he's giving you 30 points and 7 assists per game on 70% true shooting. That is a surefire top 10
My boy
player.
is back.
It's unbelievable. And, like, they put this man through hell, so thank God. This is why I was so happy they made the Jimmy trade. It's not because I didn't even think they would be as good as they are. I thought they would be noticeably better. I didn't think that they would become a top 4 team in the West.
Just don't go out sad. That's how I felt about the
Exactly.
trade. It was like, you're not going out sad anymore, and that's okay.
I couldn't agree more, man. It was depressing. It was like a complete disservice to Steph and everything he'd done for the franchise.
He made them a
out there with
fucking
that team.
like $3 billion franchise.
Literally.
You can get him a star player. Like, give me a break.
100%. And I'm so happy that they did. And the value obviously was really good. It's a really great trio that they have. So, like, if I'm comparing them to Memphis, I do definitely think the Warriors have the better big 3 in terms of just their literal raw ability, but also their experience, their IQ, the way they complement each other on both sides of the ball. I know what I'm getting from those guys. I have more questions about Ja, the level that he's been playing at. Like, how much are they going to just turn back to Ja running a ton of pick and roll versus how much are they going to stick to their system? How effective is he going to be? Because his shot's been brutal. The efficiency's been rough.
I feel like he's just one of those guys that, like, needs the ball in his hands to be at his best, and they keep taking it out of his hands.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I recognize the utility in not having just that to lean on. That's a good thing to develop, especially for when he's on the bench. But if you're shutting out your star player because this is just nowhere near what his strength is, I think that's going to cause you to lose. Even if you have a respectable, pretty good offense within this system, and you got to commend how well this has worked in the regular season, 100%. But I just don't think you're going to go to a conference finals or a championship unless Ja Morant is putting up 27 and 10.
Yeah. My honest opinion is I think that they are going to put the ball in Ja's hands a lot in the playoffs.
Right.
And I think they're going to let him do his thing more than they have because, I mean, historically, we've also just seen Ja enter like that takeover mode in the playoffs for good or for bad. Sometimes he shoots you out of games and sometimes he's taking too many pull-up threes, but like he wants to be dictating everything. They've obviously had a change in philosophy, but I think he'll be given the ball more out of pick.
I feel like if they're going to do that, though, they should at least do it a little bit in the regular season, ramp it up a little bit, because if you're just like fundamentally changing your offensive approach day one of the playoffs, then that's not going to work either.
That's a totally fair point. I also have questions about Triple J, as great as he has been, like as a scorer, as a mismatch attacker, monster. The touch, the physicality, it's so good. I still think he is a bad passer, and I still worry about what happens when it's a playoff
Yeah,
series now and teams are just doubling the shit out of him.
Yeah, dude, he's not going to handle that well, I don't think.
It concerns me. He's having such a great season, but like again, it's just more questions. That's why I'm not writing the Grizzlies off. I certainly think they can win a playoff series because like they have a lot of talent. They have a really good defense. They have really good depth. They're actually a really good shooting team now. Like this is the best half-court offense they've ever produced by a good bit.
I don't think they just have really good depth. I think they have the best depth in the league.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Yeah. That's not as big of a deal in a playoff series, you know, the fact that you can go 13 deep because you just aren't going to. But they've got a lot of good role players. I think it is for them
because they've just always had one or two key guys missing. So like having actual NBA players who can come in like that I think it's more about the injury stuff with Memphis. They're just like, I'm so fucking tired of everyone being hurt all the time, and they just signed like Scottie Pippen Jr. God, I'm blanking on the name. I'm blanking on the center who does the reverse dunks all the time. J-Huff. Yeah, like a bunch of guys on just nothing contracts for a long period of time. So like I've appreciated what Memphis has done, but as far as the conversation of them winning the West, they're fourth place for me, and I'd be shocked if it was them. I would. It goes beyond dark horse to that point to me.
You think that they're fourth? So do you have them above or fifth?
Well,
behind
fourth with Lakers, OKC, Dubs, and Nuggets. Wait, so it'd be fifth. So I'm dumb. Yeah. I can't.
No,
count.
It's okay. No, math is extremely difficult. Jaw's fine in the West, though. Did you account for that? Jaw's fine in the West.
Not in 2025.
No, well, it turns out he actually was never fine in the West.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I would take the Warriors here. I do think that Memphis is really good, but I have more concerns about them. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are, with all the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From monster slams to dishing the rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props.
Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. First timers, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. I want to talk about just this kind of hilarious thing that happened the other day where the Celtics had their first ever duo to score 40-plus points in the same game. This is a team that had John Havlicek and Sam Jones and Tommy Heinsohn all on the same team at the same time. And obviously McHale and Bird and Parrish and Ray Allen and Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. And
what about McHale? Or what about Havlicek and JoJo White?
Shout out JoJo White. Shout out Charlie Scott. I mean, listen, there's too many guys to shout out. I didn't even mention.
I'm just trying to impress you by pulling out names.
You are. I mean, please, at any point, I'll love it. I'll eat it right up. And the first duo in their history to get 40-plus in the same game is Peyton Pritchard and Derek White. And the Celtics win without a number of their guys in that game. So
huge oversight. I didn't know that happened.
Yeah.
I knew Peyton, I heard Peyton had 40. I did not hear that Derek White had 40.
The media doesn't want you to know.
I would be. Who'd they play? Who was that against? Because I'd be pissed.
Who was that against? I know. It was terrible.
If Peyton Pritchard and Derek White give me 80, I'm not turning on an NBA game for a couple weeks.
No, that's no fun. And it was Portland. And Portland's been
Portland's been good,
well.
especially defensively.
Yeah, they have been. But anyways, in light of that, here we have this team that's a defending champion. Obviously, they have a dude on their bench who you give him the opportunity, he can go off for 40. Logan, I'll start with you on this one. Do the Celtics have an argument for being the most talented team of all time?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an argument. I think it's just where they land. Their superpower to me, they're two superpowers. You mentioned it earlier, the mismatch attacking, the fact that in their starting five, that their smallest guy is 6'5", and that if there's any liabilities on the court, or 6'4" or 6'5", depending on who's in the lineup, your smallest guy is still going to be normally strong enough if they have any small guard or any weak point to go at them. Not to mention, one, how good that all their players are at attacking switches, but two, how deliberately Boston tries to find that guy. I think back to the Cleveland game that they had not that long ago where, literally every possession early in the first half, it is them, whoever's on Darius Garland is setting a screen on the ball handler, and they're trying to get that Garland switch immediately. And then it's also just the high volume of threes. And that's just what makes Boston so exceptionally difficult to guard. And for the longest time before they won the title last year, I'll be the first guy to tell you, I was critical of the offensive system. I thought that they could run cold at certain points. I didn't like it. I love it now. The fact that they can just spam threes at will and blow teams out of the water. And let's be real. It hasn't been as sexy this year as it was last year. Last year, they had more 25-point victories than any other team in NBA history. They were blowing everybody out. But that formula still exists, and it's very, very potent. So they can do that. It's this offensive haven where you have all this space because you have shooters all around the floor for everybody to attack on the interior. And then defensively, they also don't have any weak points. They have two all-defense guards in their starting lineup. They have two awesome defensive forwards, and they have rim protection out the ass with Kristaps Porzingis and old man Al Horford, who's still getting it done, not to mention off the bench. They have three really high-impact guys. Like, Peyton Pritchard is a monster of a six-man who's, would be a starting point guard on a bunch of other teams, I feel. Sam Hauser is a really high-impact wing. Luke Cornett is really good. Like, they're loaded. It just, to me, depends on where you'd have them. Like, would I put them over the 2017 Dubs? Probably not. That's just a ridiculous amalgamation of talent. The 86 Celtics, like you mentioned, probably not. The 83 Sixers are another team that I would look at where I think that they are just comically loaded top to bottom. And also,
I guess the Boston Strangler.
Shout out, man.
Andrew
Shout out
Toney,
Andrew
baby.
Toney.
That's a deep cut. That's a good shout, Jacob. Shout out.
I love Andrew Toney.
The thing that I would give the nod to those other teams for is I don't think the league as a whole was as talented as it is now, so I do think that's an advantage for some of the older teams like the 83 Sixers, the 86 Celtics, maybe the 72 Lakers. Like, I think the depth of
more
talent...
consolidated to them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that they probably have a higher percentage, but still, that being said, Boston's got... shit, dude. What, 5 top 50 guys?
Are we going? Is it like relative to the league talent or just?
Well,
I think it's kind of your interpretation, but that's how I was thinking about it.
I think it's open to interpretation. I think that it's probably more interesting if you do it relative to league, because then I think if you just do it in terms of pure talent, the only two candidates are the 2017 Warriors.
Right, right.
The 60 Celtics
are more talented now, so
exactly. The 60 Celtics, though, like at that point, it's like there are 8 teams in the league, so of course there's a super high concentration of stars. I think like once you start expanding to 20 teams is when you can have a fair comparison point.
I could give them, I think, top 5. I think top 5 is about where I'd settle with Boston.
What do you think, Jacob?
Well, I should first preface this with I am a Celtics hater, specifically this team, which it's not that I have any real contempt for them at all. I don't particularly like Boston sports fans, but I think most Boston sports fans would be like, yeah, I get it. But I like Jason Tatum. You mentioned when we were talking about the defense, like, has Jason Tatum not made an all-defensive team? Because if so, that's robbery to me.
That is.
I have routinely felt like he's the best defender on that team, which I recognize is controversial because of how damn stacked the team is.
Yeah.
In terms of just being the most impactful defender, I would give it to him. The reason I wouldn't say they're the most talented team of all time, first of all, haven't seen them battle-tested against a truly great team. Haven't seen them they didn't see anybody in front of them that they were not gonna beat this last run, which doesn't take it away from them, but we haven't seen them do that. But more importantly, I just don't think their top 2 guys are good enough. Like, I think the most talented team of all time to me has to feature at least one generational talent, and I don't think Jason Tatum quite crosses that threshold. I think he's a fine first option, but he's very far from your first choice. Jaylen Brown, again, same thing, fine second option, very far from your first choice. I think where the talent comes into the question is just like how distributed it is among the entire team, because when they have their starting lineup in there, like other than Porzingis, basically, and he's a mismatch destroyer, so that's all fine. But other than them, like catch and shoot threes, drive off of the catch, making the right pass every time. Such great playmaking between everybody, especially this last year. I got to give him credit. Jaylen Brown is taking a huge leap as a playmaker. Didn't expect that at all. I didn't expect him to be hovering anywhere near 5 assists per game at any point in his career. But I just think the top two isn't high enough for the rest of the guys to make up for it. And to me, the answer is easily the 2017 Dubs. Kevin Durant and Steph at their peaks on the same team.
Yeah.
There's the only offensive duo better than that to me is Kobe and Shaq. Obviously, the 2000 Lakers aren't making it because their
LeBron
core of
and
role
Luka.
players was very fine.
Yeah.
But
I don't even
Steph-
know if purely offensively I would take Kobe and Shaq over Steph and KD. I think I'm taking
I think
Steph
that's
and KD
fair. I
purely
understand why
offensively.
you would have that perspective, but I personally, I just think Kobe and Shaq's the best duo, period. Because I'm a big, I really like a guard big dynamic or ball handler big dynamic where ball
Magic
handler,
and Kareem, we
guard,
gotta shout out
wing.
too.
Yeah. I actually kind of feel like they're a little overrated. We can go in that if you want to, but just as a duo.
Because the
But,
peaks didn't coincide so cleanly?
Yes.
Is that you're thinking?
Yeah. I feel like there's only like 2 years where Kareem was Kareem and Magic was Magic. The rest of it was Kareem leading at first, then Magic leading the post era, which is fine. But
but
I
Magic
just think
was
they can.
also, he was so good so early. Like, no, he wasn't 87 Magic, but young Magic is still like one of the great offensive
To me, it
players
was
we've
a matter of being limited by Norm Nixon's presence. Like, that's just simply what it was. Like, he couldn't put up 15 assists per game playing shooting guard. But that aside, if your conversation goes top two players, Steph and KD, and then DPOY, Draymond Green, one of the greatest defenders of all time and probably the best of his generation, your fourth best player is Klay Thompson? Give me a fucking break. You have to worry about an open Steph 3, an open Klay 3, or an open Kevin Durant 3. And the odds that you can prevent all three of them possession to it's literally non-existent.
Well, and their
it's
fifth
the
guy,
most
too.
comically stacked team I've ever seen. And it didn't even matter that everybody else was fine.
And their fifth guy too is the ultimate connector in Andre Iguodala. I know Iguodala wasn't at his, nearly the apex of his powers, but was still a really impactful player at that point.
It's a good fifth guy.
A great fifth guy.
If you're comparing the 2017 Dubs to the Celtics right now, your number one is way better with the 2017 Dubs. If you think it's Steph Curry or Kevin Durant, doesn't matter. Your number two, I think it's Steph as well. Your number two is then better by a significantly wider margin, because now we're talking about Kevin Durant versus, in my opinion, actually, I think Kristaps Porzingis is the Celtics' second best player over Jaylen Brown.
I said that last year, and Jaylen Brown played good in the finals and conference finals,
in the playoffs.
and everyone yelled at me. And Porzingis has been very unhealthy since then. So, I can't say that I was right about it, but I'm glad to hear that someone else felt that way.
Yeah.
If he's on the floor, I mean, KP is such a unicorn, bro. Like, literally top tier pure rim protection.
They should call him that.
They should call him that. In fact, I'm trademarking that. He is a top tier stretch big, and he is up there for the absolute best post-up mismatch attacker in basketball. If you can do all of those three things at a flat-out elite level with elite efficiency offensively, like, you're just checking some of the most valuable boxes that I want from a big.
While being their rim protector.
Exactly. So he is such a monster, and I think that with Jaylen, you have more questions about the efficiency and the playmaking at times. Like, I would take KP But then, okay, either way, it's a massacre of Kevin
I've
Durant
always
versus
felt
either one.
I've always felt that Jalen just is always like at a B plus to me. Like he always is good enough, but
Yeah.
he's never exceptional. And when people say he's better than Jason Tatum,
It's
I feel like
crazy.
I'm a crazy person.
That is crazy. And like, I don't know. I just think people often fixate purely on scoring, where it's like
Right.
last year, who had the better scoring playoff run? Absolutely Jaylen Brown.
It was
over Tatum.
Jalen.
But
Yeah.
who had the better overall run, even when that was Tatum at his worst, when you consider rebounding and playmaking and the defensive versatility? Not to say that Jalen wasn't really good defensively, but Tatum is out here guarding centers and switching everything. And
He's
just
not
like
6'9", you know.
Yeah, it's just a physical tools thing to an extent. It's a size thing. And Tatum has gotten so good as a playmaker now. I mean, they're not in remotely the same tier. And like Jalen's been playing better, but Jalen's had a terrible jump shooting season from mid-range and from deep.
Yeah, I've seen, there's a lot of discourse about like, could Jason Tatum ever get into an MVP conversation? I think Boston's system right now is really shutting him out of that, because the fact that he can only get like 5, 6, I don't know exactly what he's averaging right now, but I'd guess it's like 5.5 assists per game. I feel like he's an 8, 9 per game playmaker if put in the position. But the Celtics system is just, they don't lean on a ball handler like that. But he's one of the best playmakers in the NBA, and because the assist volume isn't there, I don't think a lot of people recognize that.
But I think for great teams, I think great players have to sacrifice to win at the
100%.
highest level. And
100%.
I think people can
So wise, Logan.
I mean, I just think people can kind of underappreciate that. And I think I like Jaylen Brown, but a lot of Jaylen Brown's points in the playoffs last year also came out of transition. And that's not a slight at him, because I think Brown's one of the best transition scorers in basketball. But it's like Tatum's impact is just so much more well-rounded. And I think it's like popular to hate on him and this and that. But in a lot of ways, I still do feel like he's underappreciated. And I mean, like I just said, I do think Tatum sacrifices his raw numbers. And if people clown on him because Tatum says that, and don't get me wrong, I don't like when Tatum goes to bat for himself in the middle.
His scoring numbers are fine. And people, like, he takes the same amount of shots as any of the other top players in the league. So it's not the scoring stuff. It's the other stats that hold him back.
What he said that annoyed me, Logan, last year was when he talked about sacrificing after he had taken like 20-something shots and just shot terribly.
He shot
in
like
that game.
ass throughout the playoffs too.
Yeah,
and then
but
wanted
you
to
can't
act
talk
like...
about sacrificing if you're actually still getting your shots up.
Exactly.
But he's the most versatile player in the league today, and that's
I
what he
agree.
is. He's a do-it-all superstar.
One thing that I judge players on, especially the best players, a lot is how good are you when the shot's not falling? How good are you at getting easy offense, getting to the line, impacting on defense, still using your scoring gravity effectively, still being a great playmaker? And like, I think Jason Tatum has one of the best floors of any player in the league, because even when the shot's not going in, he is a very impactful player.
Totally agree.
It would be
Totally
nice
agree.
if the shot didn't disappear as
Yes.
often as it does, but other than that, like, I got to give him that. Like, who's a better player when the shot's not falling? Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown? It's not a question.
No, not remotely a question. Not to mention that also Tatum is a much better shooter, and he is still a better scorer. But all of this, I was just building to the point that if you're comparing the Celtics to the 2017 Warriors, the Warriors' best guy is way better, their second best guy is way better, their third guy is way better, and their fourth guy is way better. So that's a really, really difficult deficit to overcome, even though I think that Boston definitely does have the better 5 through 8, because like Drew and Horford and Pritchard and Hauser is a good player. Like they do have an advantage there, but it's not bigger than the 1 through 4.
You also have to consider where those guys were ranking in the NBA when they were together. Like Steph and KD were top 3 with LeBron. Those were the top 3 players in the league. And then Clay and Draymond were anywhere between like 12 to 20-ish. I think, get a quick hot take off here. I think Draymond was the most important player of the Warriors dynasty after Steph, and is like notably better than Klay Thompson. But the scoring bias, we talk about, people look at you like you're crazy when you say that shit. But I'm just like, I get Klay scored 20 a game. Draymond is to the Warriors defense what Steph is to the Warriors offense.
They had more top 5 defenses
Yeah.
in their run of dominance than they did top 5 offenses. When you pair a tier 1 offensive player ever with a tier 1 defensive player ever, well, maybe not tier 1, because I think tier 1 is probably just Bill Russell and maybe Akeem, but whatever. I think probably a top 5 defensive player ever with a top 5 offensive player ever.
No Tim Duncan love?
Tim Duncan would be my number 3 defender of all time. He's phenomenal, but
he's
Russell,
my number 1, but that's okay.
Oh, do you judge people relative to era? Or how do you do it? Because if so, I don't think there's any argument against Russell being number 1. Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a hard conversation. I've it's not like there's a lot of Bill Russell film either. You get a lot of claim. There's some, but you get a lot of claim to fame for inventing shot blocking.
I mean, he's just so ridiculous, dude. Because actually, funnily enough, I've brought this up so many times on the pod now, but I am working on a video where I watched an NBA game from every decade, and I watched a game from the 63 finals. Yeah, it's going to be fun, but it's a fucking behemoth. But, I mean, Bill Russell, it's just unbelievable. The impact that a great rim protector could have in an era pre-3-point line, especially in the 60s, you just can't replicate it in any era sense. And so Russell is blocking 8 to 10 shots a game. I tracked in this game, he had 8 blocks, and those are like the typical estimates for his per game average. It just wasn't tracked. He's gobbling up 25 rebounds a game, and he's also legitimately agile. He's getting out in space and blocking jumpers, but also like teams are just like, okay, we'll let you shoot jumpers. You're not getting into the paint. And if you do, you're going to have to deal with Bill Russell. So, like, that's how you get 12 number 1 defenses in 13
Jumpers
years.
were also, like, 10 years old when that team
came. They just dropped.
The jump shots just dropped, and that's all you get now.
Yeah.
No layups around here.
That's another interesting thing, because, like, there are dudes who have, like, modern-looking jumpers at that time, like Jerry West, very pretty jump shot. And then you have Kuzi with this fucking one-handed set shot flinging it. Yeah. Well, fair. But... like, it's an interesting time, but Bill Russell, to me, is definitely the defensive GOAT. But anyways, you have those two. I agree. I definitely think Draymond is over Clay. Now, to answer the question, is there a case to be made for Boston? Maybe. And I think the case that you could try to make is, of any team in NBA history, if you take away one of their stars, one of their key players, they are the strongest ever because they have so much aggregate talent, because the starting 5 is so insane, and then even the depth beyond that is so good. I went and I pulled their records over the last 2 years without all their key guys, except for Derek White. He hasn't missed much time. Without Jason Tatum, they're 10-2. Without Jaylen Brown, they're 20-3. Without Kristaps Porzingis, they're 46-10. Without Drew Holiday, they're 23-6. So they're going to win 80 to 90% of their games without any of those guys. I don't think that would hold up for Tatum, but they're still 10-2 without him. And like their net rating with him on the court versus off it over 2 years, they're like a +9 net team with him on the court, and they're like a +9 net team with him off the court. That's insane. Nobody else can do that. The problem with that case even is that the 2017-19 Warriors were still 27-4 when Steph played without KD, and they made the finals without KD in 2019. So I still don't think
that's just because he's
make
Steph,
the best claim. That's just because he's Steph. That's because they added a top 3 player to a 73-win team, and they made some sacrifices, but not a ton.
Yeah, I had a point to make and I lost it. Oh well.
Sorry, I had to glaze the Warriors a little.
Oh, I know what it was.
Steph.
I know what it was. Is how much of that is talent versus just roster construction and system? Like their combined talent. If we're filling it, if it's like a glass and you can fill it to 100% max talent, how much does that fill up versus how much of their success is they have put all the pieces together perfectly. They fit really well and the scheme works really well, but actual just aggregated talent across the board. I don't know if it's that crazy so much as the system maximizes it.
I would say it's probably 70% talent, because I think the talent is great no matter what, and 30% this system that is assembled of the perfect kind of players, right? The fact that you can pull a guy like Hauser, who is going to fit into this role of spot-up shooter, It's a simple role, but he's one of the absolute best at it. And then he can even compete defensively. Or like Derek White and Drew Holiday being able to slot into your fourth and fifth option roles offensively. And then Derek White is just like a god tier shooter.
Yeah. Drew Holiday was a 20-8 guy before he went to the Celtics. Yeah. And he gets reduced to like 13-5 now. And he just I keep saying the word maximalized. That's not a word I use a lot. I don't know where it's coming from. But like maxed out his efficiency. Yeah. Just because he's like, his 3-point percentage has been down. That's another reason. The topic is not how well will they do this postseason. I have concerns. But they're undeniably, they got to be in the top 5 at least.
They are. I think Logan shouted out some great ones. I would probably include the 87 Lakers up there with the 86 Celtics and the 83 Sixers. I do think that the 2017 Warriors clear anybody. And people will say, oh, well, what about the 96 and 97 Bulls? I mean, these teams that were, winning 72 and 69 games. I don't think their overall talent is of this same top tier that we're talking about.
They had Michael fucking Jordan, man.
They had Michael fucking Jordan, they had Scottie fucking Pippen, and they were an incredible team defense. But if you're looking at the fourth options, the third option,
it gets really thin real fast.
It's kind of that era of basketball,
Right, like the leaning on your star a ton.
Post-expansion, so talent is a little bit more dispersed throughout the league, and just not a rich era for elite offensive talent. And role players were so much more limited. Whereas, like, I don't even know if you can call Derek White a role player, but if he is, he's just about the best.
I also feel like there just wasn't a team from that era, period, that was, like, outright stacked. Maybe in the names department for, like, the 97 Rockets, but obviously they were geriatric, so...
Right. Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, there were great teams, obviously. 96 Sonics are a great team. 97
There weren't really
Jazz
super teams.
No, I would agree. Yeah. I would agree. Certainly not like the 2025 Boston Celtics, even though they don't have multiple superstars. They just have as many really good basketball players as any team we've ever seen.
Emphasis is on team, not super,
Yes,
they have a super team, not a superstar.
They do. Well, I think they have a superstar, but he's not all-time
but he's
great.
a lower tier superstar.
Yeah. I would tend to agree with that. If you haven't tried Via yet, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need to unwind, refocus, or just chill out, Via is here to enhance your everyday. And let's be honest, probably your night too. 500,000 happy customers can't be wrong. Via is changing the game in natural wellness, combining high-quality, hemp-derived ingredients with powerful cannabinoids to create real, effect-driven results. Not just fancy packaging and empty promises. Want better sleep? More focus? A little boost in the bedroom? Or maybe you just need to chill out because your stress levels are currently at screaming into the void status. Whatever you need, Via has a solution for you.
And here's the best part. Via lets you customize your experience, whether you're looking for daily wellness, laser focus, or deep relaxation, aka the kind of chill that makes you one with your couch. Via has it. With products ranging from 0 to high cannabinoid levels, they've got options for everyone. We're talking award-winning, effect-forward gummies to calming drops, all made with organic lab-tested hemp from trusted independent American farms. None of that mystery gas station nonsense. And you don't have to jump through hoops or get some weird doctor's note. Via legally ships nationwide discreetly because let's be real, your nosy neighbors don't need to know your business. No medical card required, no sketchy parking lot meetups, just straight to your door with a worry-free guarantee. Not sure where to start? No worries. Via has a product finder quiz that will hook you up with the perfect match in less than 60 seconds, which, let's be honest, is less time than it takes to decide what to watch on Netflix. So if you're 21 plus, treat yourself to 15% off and get a free gift with your first order using our exclusive code NERDSESH at viahemp.com. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. That's VIIAHEMP.com.
If you're 21 plus, check out the link to Via in our description and use the code NERDSESH to receive 15% off, free shipping on orders over $100. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via. Speaking of superstars, there's a guy who's been playing like one as of late. And when you just get him out there on the court healthy, boy, he can do some incredible stuff. And that's Zion Williamson. So I want to know, Jacob, we'll start with you. If we are just presuming health, saying Zion is healthy, how many players are you taking over him in the entire league today?
All right. So what I wrote down for this is it is dependent on what exactly your question is. Is it as in taking over, like just right now, who's better? Or
yes.
I'm building a franchise for the next 5 years.
No. Let's just go right now.
Cool.
Where does he rank among the best basketball players?
Names I wrote down. Some of them I'm not hard set on. But SGA, Jokic, Giannis, Tatum, Ant, Luka, LeBron, Cade, which is one I'm.
Whoa. Okay.
And then you said presuming health. So that means that Kawhi and Embiid and AD are in this conversation. Wemby as well. And then Steph and KD. Cade I could cut, but I think that might be it. I don't know.
Logan?
That's interesting. I agree with a lot of the names you said. I actually would have AD, but I would cut Kawhi. I would cut Embiid. Well, and I get that we're presuming health.
The hard thing with Embiid is
I don't think he's ever
going
to be the same again.
Healthy
right,
again.
right. I was just giving a it's a my league, and you turned injuries
totally
off.
Fair. Totally fair. The thing with Embiid is like, even when I put the presuming health caveat, I'm like, does he still fall into a different category? Because they're literally talking about medical retirement with this guy, you know?
Well,
so
presuming health is like, okay, and what fucking fantasy world are you living in? Because there is no world where Embiid's healthy enough, really.
That's kind of where I'm at with Kawhi and Embiid both. That's why they're pretty easy axes for me. Cade's a pretty
Zion,
easy axe.
but you could say the same thing for Zion. So I think
right. It's like if you're going to give Zion the injury benefit of the doubt,
but Zion to me is younger, and that's why I give him the pass. Kawhi and Embiid are over the hill. They're done. Like Zion, I don't think.
Kawhi's
bro, take him out back
done.
and shoot him. Jesus.
Okay, you got.
Kawhi's playing basketball. I think Kawhi and Embiid even fall into different categories now. I think Embiid is red alert. This is really, really could be it. Kawhi is obviously hurt all the time, but at least he's playing basketball.
Yeah, he still plays well when he plays.
And he plays well.
The one guy that you didn't mention that I would concretely have over Zion is Carson's boyfriend, Evan Mobley. I would have Evan Mobley still above Zion, but
my darling boy.
He's definitely a better floor player, I think.
He gives you he's going to make you an elite defense. His offensive game is budding, and I just believe in him. But Zion's really, really high for me. I think concretely I'd say like 13 or 14 for me.
Those are two players I'd love to see play together. Not that that's ever going to happen.
Mobley and Zion?
Yeah. I like that. I like that compliment. I like how they complement each other there.
It would be phenomenal to just have like an elite, versatile defensive big behind Zion, who then also can play from the perimeter some offensively. It'd be fun.
I've been trying to find a way for Miles Turner to end up next to Zion, because I'm just like, that's a match made in heaven.
Yeah, the stretch big aspect of it is awesome. Would be awesome.
Yeah, my mind is like the Brook Lopez and Giannis, like same type of dynamic.
Yeah, Zion with a stretch big would be phenomenal. Zion with a really good rim protecting big. I mean, if you could have given him Brook Lopez a few years ago, that would be like the ideal sort of guy to pair with him. I'm higher on Zion than even either of you. Here's how many names I'll go: Jokic, Giannis, SGA, Luka, Tatum, LeBron, Steph, Wemby, KD, Ant, Anthony Davis. This is not in order. And that's it. I think I'm going 11 names
No Mobley.
Deep. I think that Zion is better than Mobley. And
yeah, me too.
I love Mobley so much. I think that Zion is above even more surprisingly, I would think to most people, Jalen Brunson.
Did you say
Donovan
Wemby?
Mitchell. I did say Wemby. I think
Okay,
Wemby is
okay.
above Zion for sure, yeah. But the guy who I was debating as a 12th is Kawhi, because I just think that Kawhi is phenomenal, and I think his game is like built to assassinate you in the playoffs when he's healthy, because he gets wherever he wants on the floor, and he's so strong, and he's so ridiculously good as a shooter, and he's still a really good defender, and he's so efficient. And he's looked good. I do think that he's lost a little something more athletically this year. I don't think he's as quick. I think he's
doesn't get to the
really
rim
getting
at
to the
all.
rim at a low rate. Doesn't get to the rim, doesn't get to the line. He's still Kawhi Leonard, so I'm conflicted on that one. But Zion is such a mega force. Like, per 36 minutes, this guy is averaging 31 points, 9.5 rebounds, and 6.5 assists on 60% true shooting.
That's the thing with the health. Is the health isn't just he'll be available. He'll be available for 10 more minutes or 8 more minutes per game.
It's unbelievable what he's doing.
Have you guys
It's 8 more minutes of being like, I believe Zion's like a +8 on this stretch, and then the Pelicans are like a -18 with him off of the floor.
Yeah,
so
on
like
the year
if you
he's got a +14 on off, which is only surpassed by Jokic and Shea.
Yeah,
it's crazy
if those 12 minutes that Zion isn't on the floor is now 4 minutes that Zion isn't on the floor, huge difference, especially with a much better team around him.
Yeah. What were you gonna ask, Logan?
Have you guys seen that double team graph that's like going around with Zion, where it's like, you know, the next most double team players 20% and Zion's at like 29% or something ridiculous like that?
It's insane.
I think there's an argument to be made that Zion, as weird as it is because he's like 6'6", he's probably the closest thing to Shaq that we have seen. Like, Embiid body-wise is there, but the play style is dramatically different. But Zion's just like, I'm big as fuck, and there's nothing you can do about it.
I mean, I would say Shaq is the greatest pure rim pressure we've ever seen. He's just the greatest interior at rim force ever. Zion is the greatest rim pressure ever who initiates from the perimeter. More so than LeBron, more so than Giannis. I mean, he is just impossible to keep away from the rim. Nobody in NBA history has had that combination of unbelievable first step, being one of the strongest dudes in the league, and being one of the bounciest dudes in the league. And like, he's just gotten better and better. His touch has been so much better this year. He's, I think, close to 50% in the paint outside the restricted area.
I think him and Shaq get underappreciated for that aspect of their game.
I would agree.
Like,
I would agree.
It's not just being big, as much as I did literally just dissect it down to that. But like, Shaq had a mean hook, and like,
for sure,
you'd be surprised if you watch his old highlights. He'll hit a shot from like 10 feet out regularly.
And similarly, I would say that Shaq is underrated as a passer out of all these doubles and triple teams out of the post. And Zion is a really good passer who's improved as a passer this year.
He's getting a lot better,
And you cannot stop him in isolation. You cannot stop him out of pick and roll. You cannot stop him in transition. He's just one of the most impactful offensive players in the sport. So, like, Jalen Brunson is awesome, right? He cannot reach the efficiency ceiling that Zion can. And there are certain matchups where he's very ball dominant. And like, you put a really big athletic wing on Brunson and they can hinder his efficiency at least a bit. They won't hinder his volume necessarily, but they can really, really make him work for his buckets. Donovan Mitchell, monster. He's really, really close to Zion, and he's so good because his scoring ceiling is so high when the pull-up jumper's on and he's getting to the rim, but he does have some more volatility when his pull-up jumper isn't going. Like, Zion in every matchup, in every game, gets whatever he wants. And that's such an insanely special thing. You kind of can't overstate it. And like, those numbers per minute, Logan, we mentioned this last week, like, only Zion and Giannis are hitting those per 36 numbers. It's ridiculous what he does.
I think the ability, the access to just undeniably easy offense is the difference between great scorers and all-time great scorers. Like, you mentioned, like, Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, like, jump shot heavy guys who don't have, like, I don't know, they have pretty good rim pressure, but not obviously to the extent that Zion does. Like, just having, I am going to get to the rim, and when I'm there, there is like a 70% chance that this shot is going in.
Yeah.
Having access to that, or that I'm going to go to the free throw line, which
Mm-hmm.
it would help a lot if he got a little better at that, at actually
Sure.
hitting them. Not getting there. He's getting there.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
he's
yeah,
63,
he has
he's 63% on the year. Yeah.
he has the access to so much easy offense so frequently that there's very few players that you can argue have that level of availability of free points.
Yeah.
It
100%.
is remarkable, and I'm glad you guys brought up the touch point because I think that's the most underrated thing I've said with Zion. You know, I think people get this mental image in their head of this, you know, don't get me wrong, it's right, like this crazy athlete just flying through the air, but after he absorbs that initial contact, he is so good at adjusting and putting the exact right spin on the ball. He's 67% in the restricted area, which I think you would expect. He's 50%, excuse me, in the paint non-restricted area. And you guys are talking about that easy offense. He's averaging 19 points in the paint per game. That doesn't include any free throw numbers.
My God.
That is just in the paint. And I went back and I tried to look at other guys. I can't confirm this because I haven't looked at every player's page throughout the entire list. I'm pretty sure that's number one in the league. Like, in for example, Jokic is at...
Oh, that's for sure number one in the league.
Jokic
this year,
is at
yeah.
16.6. Zion's
feel
at
it
19.
Wasn't SGA at like 17-ish last year, I think?
Yeah, I believe that. I think he'd be down a little bit this year, though, with the increased three-point volume. SGA would. But Giannis is probably close. I still think 19 is
SGA is
the
at
most.
14. I can pull up Giannis's here pretty quickly.
It's
Is this
absolutely
restricted
incredible.
area? Or
These are
No,
in
this
the
is
paint.
in the paint.
Okay, yeah.
Giannis
Nikola
this
Jokic
year,
has to be up there then, too.
Yeah, I think,
Giannis is
Logan,
at
you said
20, so Giannis
Wow,
actually
Giannis is
barely
down.
edges him out.
Yeah,
Damn.
but let's just give Zion a few more minutes per game, and that's his. So
Right.
I want to mention the couple guys who you had above Zion, who I do think Zion is clear of. Mobley, I absolutely love. And frankly, I don't know if I can bring myself to even make a point against him. I just think it's like Zion is at that level of offensive dominance where I still think I would slightly prefer both Brunson and Mitchell in a playoff environment to Mobley, to add another couple guys just because they have that offensive ceiling. And then I think Zion is the best offensive player of the group who has the most consistent offensive floor because his physical advantages are so overwhelming. Compared to Cade, I think that Zion is actually very clear of Cade. I just think it comes down to a big offensive gap between the two. Mobley has his like top tier defensive impact and then being a good offensive player. Cade is a solid defensive player, but it's not like there's a sizable gap between him and Zion on that end in Cade's favor.
I don't know. I feel like because of the positions they play, there is. Because,
Maybe,
he's
but
like Cade's a really good defender for a point guard, I think, because of his size. And then Zion is a okay defender for a forward.
yeah, but it's not like Zion is anchoring your defense where it's like super consequential. And
Yeah,
I
of
think he's been
course
better
not.
this year. Like he's okay. And I would say Cade is good defensively. But I think that primarily you're judging these guys off of their offensive value. And there, I just think Cade is really, really good.
Yeah.
But he has his flaws with the finishing around the rim, with the turnovers, with some of the efficiency stuff. Just doesn't manufacture the easiest offense, whereas Zion literally does manufacture the easiest offense that there is.
I'm
that
with
to me
you.
Is the difference.
I'm with you as I was. That was the one I was the most hesitant on because
Uh-huh.
I'm very high on Cade. I think I saw a clip of you guys talking about him. They were like, he's not top 10. And I was like, maybe. But the access to easy offense thing, as we've talked about, like, yeah, he doesn't have that. He also doesn't get to the free throw line as much as you would like him to for his volume. And his 3-point shot, while it's been pretty good this year, I still don't trust it outright. And that would be the huge edge that he would have offensively over Zion is the shooting. But I'm still, obviously, it's night and day the difference between the two of them. But Cade's not quite like where I'm like, oh, yeah, that's an elite shooter by any means.
I also think Zion's offensive versatility is so valuable. He can just do so many different things for you, give him the ball in so many different ways. And Cade is very ball dominant, which partly I think is maybe situation. I think definitely is partly situation, but I also think part of it is just inherently sort of his play style and the fact that he's not that really high level catch and shooter where, he would be a super seamless off ball fit. I do think Cade is great. I don't think he's Zion level. And part of that is just I think Zion is absolutely insane. Like, I think Zion is, again, above Mitchell, above Brunson. If somebody told me that they had Zion above Ant, I wouldn't think that that's insane.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's how good Zion is.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Let's say 2 years from now, and we're talking Zion gets to be healthy this whole time. 2 years from now, where would he rank? If we presume like LeBron, Steph, and KD age out a little bit,
I mean, healthy Zion could be top 5. He's a fucking freak.
It's possible.
Right.
Like,
well, let's do the exercise. Jokic, Shea, Luka,
Tatum.
I don't know. Still be better.
I'm not sure.
Maybe that's not a lock, but Tatum's so good.
I think y'all are doing Tatum's defense and all around impact a little bit of a disservice. I think Tatum would be a lock for me.
Giannis, I don't think will have regressed significantly.
Yeah.
So that's 5.
Wemby.
And
did you guys say
Wemby? Actually, I think we're going to get closer to 10 names. So now we're at 7. Personally, I actually think in 2 years, Mobley will be better than Zion because I think Mobley still has so much game he can grow into offensively. Somebody like
couldn't you argue Zion has
you
grown
definitely
to
could.
Defensively?
You could.
Yeah.
But I think that Mobley has more. I mean, I think the improvement that we've seen from him just this year, now that he's really in a system that is incentivizing him to contribute offensively with a coach who's empowering him. Mobley keeps getting better as a shooter, keeps getting more comfortable as a ball handler, even better as a playmaker. I think that ceiling is terrifying. It's not a lock, though, but I would probably bet on it.
You give Zion health, though. I think he's a lock. I think he is a consensus top 10 player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he would be. I mean, I want to mention Chet. I think Chet can get there. I don't know if it'll be in 2 years, but I think he'll definitely get there at some point. And Cade would be in that conversation. Paolo, if he figures things out.
Is a men on the fringes at all in 2 years?
I can't rule it out. I would not bet on it up against like a Zion. I mean, I think a men's ceiling is unbelievably high, but
do we think a man needs a jump shot to crack the top 10?
Doesn't need one, but I mean,
well, to crack the top 10.
Right.
So my thing with the men has always been people freak out when they see a wing who can't shoot. And understandably so, because in today's NBA, there are very, very few guys who succeed in that archetype. There also are no guys who are as absurdly good at so many things around that as a Men Thompson, where you're a one-of-one athlete, absolutely elite rebounder, god-tier transition player, elite defender, good playmaking feel. So, like, that's why I've always thought he's a lock to be a really good player. I think he will be a top 25 player if his shot doesn't get better from here. To be a top 10 player, I do think his shot would have to improve so he could become a more really, really high-level on-ball threat. I don't think the shot has to be great, but I think it would have to be more solid.
I think the encouraging sign for him there is that the floater is real. Like, he's not, like, inept in the touch department.
No, and the free throw shooting has been very solid, and he's been decent from mid-range, like shoots in the high 30s, and he's comfortable shooting mid-range pull-ups. He's gotten a lot better compared to last year. Like last year, he was a zero shooter, and now he's like still a below-average shooter, but not a terrible one. So he could be, Logan. He could be a top 10, but I don't know that I would bet on it. But yeah, I think Zion probably, if he stays healthy in a couple years, right around that 10 spot. I mean, Donovan Mitchell isn't going anywhere. A lot of these guys aren't going anywhere, but I already think Zion's better than Mitchell.
Last thing I want to mention, and I pray to God this is not the kiss of death I'm about to put on Zion, but
please don't.
He looks like he's in great shape, right? Like he looks slim.
Apparently he's the lowest weight that he's been playing with since he's been in the NBA.
It looks like it too. And so I'm gonna knock on wood real quick. I'm hopeful that this is a positive signal of things to come.
You want me to rip that hope out of your heart real quick?
No.
I am mildly fearful that what we're seeing from Zion is he was like, okay, I finally have enough motivation because my contract is on the line. I'll ensure I get that money, and then I'm going right back to
Oh,
Cheetos
man.
and porn stars.
Well, but he has an extension for a few years from now, right?
Well, his money was not guaranteed, and he had like weigh-ins and like games played requirements that he had to like for like I think tens of millions of dollars were on the line. So I'm like, is that the reason that you finally got in shape? Do you not intrinsically just have the motivation to be a good basketball player? Because that would suck if that's the case. I would also love if he was like, being one of the best players in the NBA is kind of fun. I think I'm going to keep doing that.
God, I would hope he chooses the latter. The sad part of this all is like, I am never going to bet on Zion remaining healthy for an extended stretch, which is why I'm trying to make the most out of this awesome stretch where he is healthy and he's playing the best basketball of his life, and we can appreciate the monumental talent that he is. But like, I think if you just look at the most likely outcome based on what we've seen so far, like he's going to get hurt again.
I tend to hate how much we do like weight discourse about players, especially because I think you kind of get in this vicious cycle because when weight is an issue, and I can relate to Zion, the ability to put on 20 pounds in 2 weeks if you don't pay attention. He gets overweight, and then that causes him to get hurt. And because he's hurt and he's not playing, he gets more overweight. Where like if he can just keep the weight down the whole time, it just needs to stay down. If it stays down, I think the injury problem becomes dramatically reduced, way less likely to be a huge issue. But if the weight comes back, we're right back to square one.
The hard thing is, like, even when his weight is down, he's still 6'6", 265, playing one of the most athletically dependent and physically taxing brands of basketball. And, like, I still worry that that's a lot of strain on your lower body. It's not as much as when he's 285 plus, but his play style is not one that is built for longevity.
There's a lot of discourse about Ja Morant and him, like, not dunking. Obviously, Ja is dunking and Zion is dunking. But I do think Zion, maybe it's a conscious choice or maybe his vertical just isn't what it used to be. But I do think he plays pretty low to the ground, which is
think it's conscious. I do think it's conscious. And I think that that's a good point. Like, he doesn't get all the way to the rim at the same obscene rate that he used to. He still gets there a lot, but
he's not
that's
throwing
why
himself
so important.
He's not throwing himself to the rim recklessly. Like,
I agree.
Yeah.
He still, though, is like downhill over and over and over at 6'6", somewhere between 265 and 285.
I think it would maybe help if he had a little bit less ball handling responsibility, just a little bit more. I love Zion as a playmaker, but in an ideal world, he's a secondary playmaker, and then he has someone to set him up a lot. That would be another way to, I think, take some of the strain off of him.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, as much as we love to hypothesize, the odds are high that we're not going to see top 10 player Zion, maybe ever. God, hopefully that's not the case. Especially because, like, the face of the league conversation has been so over the top and annoying. It's a conversation because Zion didn't work out. If Zion just came into the NBA and was as good as he was immediately, it might not have helped that he was on the New Orleans Pelicans, but dude would have been the face of the NBA, and then it just didn't happen. It really sucks.
You mentioned that discourse that has been very prevalent as of late, which is kind of a weird thing. So I was just curious as to your guys' thoughts. Why do you think the NBA world is so obsessed with finding that next face of the league? Why is this such a dire concern for so many people?
I have an interesting take on this one, I think. Obviously, the reason that people are looking for a face of the league is we have historically operated that way. Like, the NBA was on the verge of failure when Magic and Bird got drafted. They had the most watched basketball game ever at that point in time when they played in the championship. They get drafted. They go to the biggest rivalry in the sport anyways. Two of the biggest, most popular franchises in the sport anyways. And they lift up the league to what it is now. And then, right as they're out the door, Michael Jordan comes in, and Michael Jordan is, I don't think Michael Jordan will ever be eclipsed in terms of the strength of how much he was the face of the league.
Yeah.
Even LeBron at his height did not bring the NBA the level of popularity that Jordan did. Which, to be fair, Jordan was bringing it from a lower point. You know, there's only so many damn people. But then Jordan goes out, LeBron comes in pretty quickly after, but the years in between and the years where it was Wizards MJ were really pretty brutal. The Lakers had Kobe and Shaq to, you know, bring some allure, but otherwise the rest of the league saw ratings declines and all of that. I think the reason that the face of the league discourse and the NBA is getting worse, the NBA is failing discourse, I think it's because the people who talk about this shit need it to be good to keep paying their bills. Straight up. Like, there are so many people who are like, oh shit. Because when the NBA's ratings are down, my views are down. It's a direct correspondence with that. So I think the personal aspect of it is bleeding into the discourse in a way that people are not considering. Obviously, there are people on Twitter who are just talking about this for the fun of it. But the discourse is driven by creators, analysts, all of that. And they all have a personal stake in the league doing better. So they're looking at numbers going down. They're like, oh, fuck, my career's over. So there's that. And then the other thing, I think the reason why the conversation is dumb is I don't think the current culture allows for a face of the league. I don't think there can be a true individual guy who is the face of the NBA, because I think there's just too much diversity of opinion and discourse. And like, before, you had the face of the league spoon fed to you by the media. They were an intermediary where rather the basketball and its reaction to it is raw from the audience immediately online. There is a public forum to pick apart every little thing. So it makes the attractiveness of being the face of the league significantly worse, as LeBron has talked about. But I also just think where society cannot focus on one thing long enough. We have to move on constantly. So I just don't think they're going to be a guy who's the face of the NBA for a decade anymore, at least not as the way discourse works stays the same.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of what you said. I think, I don't think we're going to have a new face of the league, so to speak, until LeBron exits. LeBron is such a superstar and such a global figure that he's the guy until he's gone. I don't really, there's a lot of other guys who I think could have.
Him and Steph.
Yeah,
they basically share that spotlight.
I was going to say, there's guys who I think maybe have held the mantle briefly, if it was Steph, if it was KD, whoever. LeBron is still that guy. But I think you touched on it a little bit. I don't think necessarily we need it, and that's why it's so confusing to me, is because I think the product is so good and so well-rounded. And I just, again, I think people draw the wrong conclusions about the ratings. The reason the ratings are down are not because people are not watching the sport. The reason the ratings are down is because people aren't watching the sport through measurable metrics. All of your metrics are coming from the TV numbers. People don't watch TV anymore. People go on their computer, they find the website, and they stream it. And it's like...
you wouldn't steal a car, though, would you, Logan?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't steal a purse. I wouldn't steal a handbag.
Okay. Just checking.
I do think that's easily the biggest problem in the ratings discussion, but we don't need to go down this rabbit hole because I've done it a million times. But I think the NBA has dropped the ball on presentation dramatically.
I agree with that.
I think presentation, and I also just think the overall toxicity within the sport, and it's really disheartening to me.
The very negativity skew.
Yeah, and it's not just a unique problem to the NBA. I think it's a unique problem, or not.
To
it's
the
not
world.
a unique problem. No, true. Oh my gosh, preach,
dude.
brother.
People, like a couple will post a photo of themselves on Twitter, and now it's discourse. There are dozens of quote tweets with 100,000 likes about why they suck. It's just like, why is this how we exist now? Why are we analyzing and being critical about every aspect of anything anyone ever does? It makes it very exhausting to participate in any kind of discourse, and I damn well wouldn't want to be the center of it. Like I assume you guys have had a tweet that's just like, fuck this fucking guy, and it has 300 likes, and you're like, I guess I'm sad as hell.
I'm universally beloved. I can't relate. But Logan, you actually, I actually run an account that just tweets "fuck you" at Logan every day, so you do have that. But yeah, it's awesome. I love it.
I agree with you fundamentally. I think it's a problem. Man, we live in a society, fellas.
We do.
Yeah.
I was going to say to like the WNBA as well, where it's like people just have to hate. And that's something that's frustrating to me, where you'll hear these...
Caitlin Clark thing.
Yeah, these old players. And I've watched a lot of women's basketball. I enjoy watching college women's basketball. Caitlin Clark is
Salute.
Caitlin Clark.
Shout out women.
Yeah, word to women.
Hey. Big ups to women, everybody. We got about 2% women following, depending on the platform. Some places up to 4%. We're looking to double that.
Big time feminist.
Ladies?
Big time feminist here at Nerd Sesh.
Love women.
It's like when old WNBA players will hate on Caitlin Clark, and it's like, well, I don't know what you guys are watching. Caitlin Clark's the best women's basketball player I've ever watched. And so to get people to watch the sport, to me, it's very simple. I would prop her up and I would tell people, this is the greatest women's basketball player I've ever watched. You got to see this shit. What she's doing has never been done before. And to that, I would say is that's how we need to package it to the NBA audience. But when you pay Stephen A. Smith an $100 million contract to spew negativity and to continue peddling this bullshit that I think people are simply over with, I don't give a fuck what Stephen A. Smith has to say about Bronny again. I don't care. I'd rather him tell me about something that I haven't heard, or prop up Victor Wembanyama, or prop up Anthony Edwards, or that's my problem. It is basically just inherently still the coverage that the NBA gets and the focal point on negativity, when it's like, it's so much easier. We could talk about all the it's the world in general. I mean, it's what you spotlight, what you highlight is what's going to get discussed about. And if we continue talking about the sport in a negative way, well, guess what? The audience is going to view it through that lens as well. It's incredibly frustrating as a guy who loves basketball.
You're also just not just competing with other leagues, theoretically. You're competing with going on HBO Max and
100%.
Putting on Succession.
100%.
Succession's on HBO Max, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Watching, a movie, or scrolling TikTok, whatever it may be. Like, you have to be more entertaining than that, not just more entertaining than what you used to be, or more entertaining than other sports leagues. Like, there is more content now to a point where nothing can stand out on its own. Like, I even think of just like the landscape of YouTube or movies and media. Like, I think the closest thing to like a show being the face of television was Succession, and that didn't really quite catch it. Like, we haven't had something like Breaking Bad dominating the show's zeitgeist in a very long time.
Like the 90s Bulls, like Seinfeld or something like that.
Well, 100%.
Right, like just undeniably huge and focal. Nothing gets that big of a stage anymore.
No, 106 million people watched the finale of MASH in 1983. I think like Succession averaged 4 to 6 million viewers or somewhere in there. And I think that that's a great point. And that's something that I try to reiterate whenever this conversation comes up. The world is full of niches now. There is so much more competition constantly with content. Back in the day, I mean, just the raw number of channels that you had on TV was way smaller. And TV is now competing with so many other platforms within which, I mean, look, we got a podcast here. There's a million other dudes with podcasts. And like, it just doesn't end. The options don't end. So it's not surprising when it's incredibly difficult to hold the same mainstream cultural space that you used to 20 years ago, because everything is more distributed now.
I just want to add to that point that I also think that the TV ratings numbers can not only be misleading because of the streaming, but I also think the game of basketball lends itself sometimes to even I watch the NBA every single night that it's on, right? Sometimes I'll go back and I'll watch a game that I didn't watch that isn't going to get represented in that total because, maybe I wanted to speed through this game. Maybe I wanted to zip through it. That number isn't going to get calculated, and I think it can be a little misleading because you can't watch all the games every single night. Basketball it's an easier sport to go back and watch, right? I think it's unique in that way too.
I actually rarely, only when it's big games do I actually watch games live, because I like to use the all possessions thing because it just speeds you through all the bullshit.
It is awesome.
There are, the occasional moment where it cuts out something that would have been nice to see, but it's like 90% good. So it's just like, yeah, do I want to sit down for 2.5 hours, listen to the TNT crew say a bunch of dumb shit, or do I want to just watch the game in the morning, 40 minutes, and I'm done? Yeah. But that's probably more of a content creator thing.
I think
don't
that
know how
is
many
more
people...
of a content creator thing.
Yeah.
Well, I actually agree. I mean,
or the highlights the next day. I'm just like, to what you guys are saying, it's harder to compete with things that are live when I do have that kind of access to a sporting event the day after.
And people's attention spans are so bad now. Like, they want it very consolidated. Like, whether it's all possessions or it's 10-minute highlight compilation, it's like, I can watch this whole game roughly. Again, if you're a content creator, that does not pass. Right. It's not good enough to watch a 10-minute highlight, but it is if you're just a guy.
Yeah. I think, circling back to the main question here, not just looking at the ratings, why is there this obsession with finding a new face of the league specifically? I think you made a good point, Jacob, in that historically, major difference between the NBA and the NFL is the value in the NFL is in the team brands. It is in the logo on your helmet. The value in the NBA is about the superstars. The players are just so much more visible. Historically, they've had bigger personalities. Their impact on the game is bigger. Their play styles
There isn't a
are
helmet
so distinct.
obscuring their face.
Isn't a helmet obscuring their face. Exactly. There's no such equivalent for a superstar left tackle, which is not a very visible or fun position for the average person to watch in the NBA. A star in the NBA is a star who is going to draw attention and is going to be a big driver for whatever team they're on in the league. And obviously, like, it's an entire phenomenon in today's NBA for people to just stan players, for them to follow players from team to team because they're that compelled by them. I think you made a really good point about the fact that this is not a landscape that is going to necessarily create that sort of universal face like we used to see. Part of that is, I think, legitimately stan culture. Like, especially in these online spaces, people are so attached to their guy. An Ant fan will never concede that Shea is better than Ant, and will never think that Shea is the face of the league, even if a couple years down the line, that seems like it clearly should be the case. There's just so many divided loyalties with all of this. Again, it comes back to the same idea. Everything is more niche.
There's also the nationalism aspect of it.
That's
the
huge
gatekeeping,
one.
The gatekeeping, gatekeeping it to be strictly an American. Me personally,
Amen.
I don't get it. I've never understood judging people so much by where they come from, so much as just who they are. Existence, where you were born, the circumstances you were born into is a fucking dice roll. You could have just as easily woken up in Iraq. Okay. Says nothing about the person you are other than how it influenced you. And someone like Victor Wembanyama, if Victor Wembanyama can't be the face of the league, nobody can. Because there is nobody who is more of a spectacle and such a good, solid dude. Anytime you listen to him talk, first of all, speaks great fucking English. Not even a hint of not being able to speak it. Speaks English great. And he's so down to earth and real. I could only pray to have been as solid of a person as Victor is at the age of 20. I sure as shit wasn't. He checks every single box except he's French. And to me, that is so whack. And because of that, because the game has become more dominated by foreign players, if we can't let any of them, even if someone's fucking Canadian, which is barely not American, even that is not good enough. It's not good enough for so many people, and I don't fucking get it. But I also feel like guys like Stephen A. Smith going on TV and saying that the face of the league can't not be American,
it's crazy.
Reinforces
He's divisive.
that.
He's
and
divisive.
It's like I can't emphasize enough how much the mainstream NBA media creates self-fulfilling prophecies. They say something is the way that it is, and then it becomes that way
And
because they said that's
people
the way it is.
attach to it. I completely agree, man.
I could not agree more. And in fact, this is the big point that I was building to. I just think that's the craziest thing. Wemby is the generational prospect that LeBron James was. He is that once every few decades prospect. He is every bit as jaw-dropping to watch. What LeBron had with his one-of-one athleticism and playmaking. Wemby is 7'4" with an 8-foot wingspan. He shoots 9 threes a game, makes 36% of them, blocks 4 shots a game, does things nobody else in the history of the game has been capable of. And like you said, I mean, he's not some crazy personality, but LeBron isn't. I think Wemby's actually more interesting than LeBron as a person. Like, I think that there is a lot to like about Wemby, and that's something that I do think people talk about missing with the older NBA is you had some more unpolished, raw, authentic personalities. You had an Allen Iverson. Now everybody's so media trained. Now you have Ant who will go out there and say whatever he wants.
I think that's a byproduct of the internet and just needing to be,
I totally agree.
be a little bit more buttoned up.
And everything is so huge. I mean, there's just so much at stake. It's such a crisis if you say something that is a story because there's so much media that's going to feed off of that. And so that's a reality. To me, it's not a big deal. But yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, you know how I know Victor is that type of player where it's just as jaw-dropping as you conceive of? I don't know if you guys are single or not, but if you've ever gone through the process of showing your girlfriend who does not give a shit about basketball highlights. I'm like, I'm telling you, babe, this is really cool. I put on a 10-minute highlight compilation of Victor Wembanyama. She sat there and watched every minute of it in awe. And I'm like, if she can see that, anyone who likes sports can. And you said like LeBron, he's as big of a spectacle since LeBron. I would argue just because he literally looks like he's from another planet, he is even more of a spectacle than maybe any basketball player ever was.
I think that's a totally reasonable thing to say. And that's why it just boggles my mind that him being internationally born is a disqualifier in this conversation to a lot of people. Like, everybody is turning to Tatum. They're saying the face of the league is right in front of us. Those who are saying there is somebody waiting in the wings that I'm seeing, they're all saying Jason Tatum. And it's like, okay, you're just defaulting to the best American player of this generation.
I don't think you can be the face of the league if you're not one of the 3 best players minimum in the league.
I agree. And also, like, Steph, I think the reason that he became such a global sensation, it's not just how great he is, it's also like that one-of-one experience that you have as a viewer. That's
nothing like watching Steph.
Nothing like watching Steph and some of the other absolute best players in the world today who are foreign-born. Giannis is a one-of-one experience as a viewer. Jokic, the fact that it was a thing for years that people said he was boring blows my mind. One-of-one experience as a viewer in NBA history. Shea, one-of-one experience. Like, those dudes are not only greater than Tatum, they are also such unique basketball talents. Ooh,
I think Shea is just Kobe. It's okay. That's obviously reductive, but he plays
well. Okay, all right. Shea is not
higher
as
rim
unique.
Frequency.
He is not as unique as a Giannis or Jokic in terms of the talent. I still think that the combination of balance, body control, the way that Shea moves, his change in pace, all of that being put in that 6'6" slithery ass body with his finishing and his pull-up shooting and his bag, like, I am in awe when I watch Shea. He's my favorite scorer to watch ever. I certainly think he's a lot more fun to watch than Jason
Didn't you know
Tatum.
he was a free throw merchant?
Fuck! God.
You can't enjoy watching him anymore.
He sucks. I just realized because he shoots 9 free throws a game. He scores 33 points per game. What would he do without the free throws? I don't know. He'd probably be working at a McDonald's.
I'm actually working on a long-form deep dive video right now about the foul merchant discourse. I ran the numbers. The average, there's been 84 30-point per game seasons in history. The average between that from the spectrum is 32.5 points. The average free throw attempts per game for 32.5 points is 10. He's below that average, and he's the face of being a free throw merchant. I think we just need someone to call that. And we had James Harden, and then it was Joel Embiid, and now Joel Embiid's gone. So
Yeah.
SGA is the foul merchant, even though it doesn't make any fucking sense at all.
I could not agree more. We've gone through the numbers here as well. And it's not just that he's well below average for a scorer of this volume in terms of his free throw rate. He is also in the absolute top tier in terms of shot making, effective field goal percentage, putting the ball in the basket on a field goal. He is one of the best we've ever seen. So that narrative makes no sense. But
he's also tops near drives per game, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh
the
my
guy-
God, what a coincidence. The guy
by
who
far, he drives
the lane the
22 times a
most.
game.
Yeah,
He gets
exactly.
fouled. I went and I looked at the guys who get the top free throw percentage on their drives, the guys who are fouled the most on drives, and Shea isn't in the top 8. He's high, but he's not outlier high whatsoever.
Can you DM me those numbers? That would be great for the video.
Yeah, I will. It's actually really interesting. Paolo gets fouled on like 17% of his drives, get downhill.
The number that I ran, it is 71% of 30-point per game seasons. The player averaged more attempts than SGA does from the line. 71%.
And this is one of the great downhill guards ever who's driving multiple
But
times.
no,
more
you
per
never
game than
hear,
anybody
it's
ever.
never packaged as Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is one of God's greatest scorers to ever walk the earth. He's a free throw merchant.
Yeah. All of this to say, I think it is so incredible how much international talent has blossomed. I think it is the reason the NBA is as amazing as it is today. So many of the best players in the league are coming from outside of the United States. The skill level is higher. The depth of talent is higher. The superstars are better, and we have a richer group of them than ever before. And so much of that is because this game has grown to become this incredible global thing. And by the way, I think that the NBA media has such an American-centric perspective with so many of these discourses. Ratings to begin with do not incorporate anything outside of the U.S., which is how so much of the sport is consumed today. That's a huge blind spot. And this whole thing about face of the league, Yao Ming was arguably the face of the league in Kobe Bryant's prime, because for a country of over 1 billion people, he was the face to them, right?
That's a good take.
I think stuff like that goes completely ignored. And maybe it's just because, like, growing up, I was always a huge tennis fan. So, like, if I was going to be a tennis fan and I was going to be like, I only like the Americans, I was in for a rough time, man, because they're just, weren't a lot of great American players. It's a global sport. And so I've never had that tendency to just attach myself strictly to these Americans and say these are the guys who I'm all about. And I think that that's very limiting if you do view it that way. And it's a very, very strange thing to me. And the weirdest one maybe is that, like, people haven't embraced Giannis as that guy. Even though I think Jokic is better, personally, I enjoy watching Jokic more. Like, Giannis has that crazy athleticism that appeals to sort of the median or more casual fan. He's got the personality. He's a funny, outgoing guy.
Winner, like, chicken dinner.
Yeah, winner, chicken dinner. Get him his 50 nuggets. And he's Greek, so he's not the face of the league. Like,
I think his accent's too thick. That's literally what it is. There are people who can't get over that.
Man.
That's my thing on Wemby is, like, Wemby, if you told me Wemby was American, I'd believe you. He sounds like he's an American if he needed to be, I could understand if there's like a heavy, thick accent or they literally don't speak the language. That is a barrier that is going to be hard for people. But, like, if that's not a problem, there shouldn't be a problem at all. I cannot relate to the... I think it's such a limited worldview if it's like, oh, I can't relate to someone who's not from America. Well, that sucks. I'm sorry you live such a fucking hollow existence.
It's also, to me, still a lot of emphasis placed on something other than the basketball product, which, again, maybe I'm different than most people. Like, I come to the NBA first and foremost by far to watch the best basketball on the planet and what is my opinion the most beautiful sport in the planet. A guy's personality off the court and all that, I'm not saying I don't value that. Like, I think it's great when the league has good personalities, obviously, but it's very secondary to, holy shit, this is the best basketball we've ever seen. And maybe that's just different. Maybe a lot of people value personality more than I do. And I think that is fair, but also I think it's reflective of this condition that the NBA world has where we are obsessed with talking about anything other than the basketball.
Yes. We gotta have Kevin Hart MC the event.
Oh, so
every
good.
every distraction, anything but what's happening on the court. And
Let's
I mean,
get Mr. Beast out here.
Yeah, I love trades. I love free agency. I fucking love drama. I love when players are being petty with each other. I love all of those things. It is my favorite aspect of the game first and foremost. But that comes after, in terms of it actually existing. It comes after the basketball. And as long as the basketball is good, everything else should come after it and be fine. But we're putting the cart before the horse, worrying about the shit that isn't what's on the floor.
I agree. Any other thoughts before we let you go, Jacob, for giving us 2 hours of your time?
I know, I had a great time. There's no problem with that. And I think that's all.
All right, that's all, folks. Everybody go check out Jacob. That's Rusty Buckets everywhere. And you have your 2 YouTube channels. You have your deep dive account that you're mentioning.
I got 3 now.
3. Look at me, fucking up the outro. Useless piece of shit that I am. So go check them all out. You've got Rusty Buckets. You've got also Rusty Buckets, or the main one, or the biggest one now is Deep Dive with Rusty Buckets, where you're doing all the deep dives. What's the third one?
The third one is called Little Rusty Buckets, where I make 8 to 10 minute videos on shit that I just wouldn't make a video on otherwise. So like, I'm like, yeah, I can quickly capitalize on like a Luka trades that almost happened video. Or here's me reacting to a Stephen A. Smith clip real quick. Like just some bottom tier, slop, so that we have a.
No, my friend. You don't know how low the bottom tier goes if you're saying that. it's low.
Essentially, the theory is just we have 3 tiers of content quality.
Yeah.
The Rusty Buckets channel is right down the middle. Deep Dives, really high quality. Little Rusty Buckets, come get your filth.
I love it. It's a phenomenal formula. Logan, you and I are just doing all filth at this point, huh? But maybe someday we'll get out of the gutter. Maybe someday we'll be in that mid-tier.
Complete slop.
God, I hope. Well, if you want all of our slop, it's everywhere, baby. YouTube, we got all of our full shows. We also have our own video essays where we go deeper into one topic, film breakdowns. I'm working on a video about Jokic and the crazy defensive coverages he's seeing right now that should be up today. Otherwise, I will be bad and Logan will punish me for that. So stay tuned for that. Listen to the show across all audio platforms. And if you want, follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and of course, all of our short form trivia content. So one last shout out to Jacob. Go check out Rusty Buckets everywhere. Obviously phenomenal stuff. And I think his performance today on the pod should sell you on going out and checking all of his content if you aren't already, which you probably are. But with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
I've been Jacob.
And this was Nerd Sesh.